If you spotted a black cat while you were out trick-or-treating last night and think you'll have bad luck, or you're just generally superstitious about them, we're raising a bit of awareness this morning. Black cats, they're actually the opposite. They're good luck. Here is a post shared by the Protectors of Animals on Facebook for Halloween. The organization reminds everyone one scary Halloween fact: black cats and kittens are statistically the last ones to be adopted. Protectors of Animals, based in East Hartford, has a lot of black kittens available for adoption right now. If you happen to be looking for a new kitty, you can check out the organization's website to fill out an application and go ahead and start the adoption process. Right now, we're raising awareness about animal abandonment and how to react, or what to do if you can no longer care for your pet. There are a number of animal shelters all across our state dealing with abandonment every day. So far, more often than the stories make the news. This morning, we're talking to Laura Durbin, the director of Dan Cosgrove Animal Shelter in Brantford. And her shelter recently told us about some abandoned kittens lucky to be alive thanks to a quick-acting, smart-thinking postal worker. Sadly, though, this is not the only case of recent abandonment or neglect. Laura, thanks for being with us. Now, we know this is happening so often. We're seeing it so much on social media. Talk about these recent issues with animal abandonment and how the pandemic has really contributed to these problems in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Yeah, we're definitely seeing an increase in animals being abandoned. We're getting phone calls, I'm going to say upwards of 50 phone calls a day from people who are not just calling, but emailing and messaging us on our social media platforms. And I think a lot of it has to do with people who adopted or purchased during the pandemic, who are now finding themselves busy going back to work or having the kids go back to school, physically at school instead of being home. And they're concerned because they didn't necessarily plan properly for what was going to happen. So they're just unfortunately letting them go on the side of the road, whether they're leaving them literally in boxes on the side of the road or they're just abandoning them somewhere.
Now, a lot of these animals have ended up lucky, and that's just thanks to good Samaritans. It really should not be a game of chance, though. If someone honestly cannot take care of their pet anymore, if they're finding that they're too busy, or, in some cases, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and it can get really expensive to take care of a pet, and sometimes the money is just not there anymore. What should they do if they want to give up their pet? They want to do it safely. They want to make sure that they're still taken care of.
Well, the one thing I can tell people is to plan. So make sure that when you're certainly getting an animal, that you're planning ahead of time, that you're realizing that it could be an 18-year commitment. But if you find yourself in a position where you already have the animal and now you're financially insecure and can no longer care for the animal, start reaching out to shelters and also other resources that we're actually going to provide a whole list on our Facebook page for people, because we know sometimes it's humiliating. You've lost your job. You don't want to call and ask because you just feel terrible, but you have to give up your animal. But planning ahead of time is one of the best things to do. So if you're in a position where your job is unsteady, start calling immediately to shelters and saying, it looks like I'm going to lose my job in the next month. Can I get on a waiting list so that I can give up my animal to you? And even if they aren't going to have space or they can't take in your animal, they certainly could provide you with resource guidance. So places that will take in your animal. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the fact that you're losing your job. Sometimes you're just financially strapped and can't help an animal who's sick. And we will provide a list for those types of situations as well. Because we think that if people want to keep their animals in their homes, we certainly want to help and guide them to be able to do that.
So what kind of help is available? You're talking about how you want people to be able to keep their animals if they really, really want to. And for a lot of people in a situation where they've lost their jobs or they're financially strapped, it's heartbreaking for them to think about having to give away their animals. What resources are available for those folks?
So sometimes we hear from people that they can no longer afford the food to feed their animal. And there are actually pet food pantries all across the state. Sometimes people just don't know where to look. There are places in Newington, Waterford, Brantford, Wilton, Cheshire, you name it, all across the state. There are resources for people. Sometimes it's just like what I said, like they might have an animal who got sick all of a sudden and they don't know how they're going to afford to get that animal surgery or medication. And there's grants out there as well. There's places resources. There's organizations called Red Rover that help with different things, whether it's an emergency surgery or it's medication for, some sort of an infection. There's resources right here in Connecticut through the Connecticut Humane Society. They offer low-cost veterinary care, but there's also other foundations in Connecticut that will provide grants to people who are going through hardships. So there's definitely options, and people just need to know where to find the resources before they just give up their animal if they certainly want to try to keep them.
Yeah, Laura, that is so important for people to know because a lot of people might not know that there are resources available and it's just maybe the food that they think they can't afford. And that can make a huge, huge difference for those pet owners. And they just don't want to lose their family members. They are like family.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've heard from people too that they're moving and they don't know what to do with their animal. We're going to provide a list for people too where there's housing options where people can bring their pets because it is a big deal. You want to be able to move somewhere where you can bring your cat or have your dog. And so we'll give people, options for that too.
All right, Laura, thanks so much. We really appreciate that information, important information. And of course, that checklist that you were mentioning can be found on the website, right?
Thank you. Yes, it'll be on our Facebook page and we'll post it on our website too.